Good morning, Elizabeth, and thank you for joining my podcast this morning. How are you?
I'm quite well, and thank you so much for having me.
Great. So, Elizabeth, for those that don't know who you are, so you were a former Gartner analyst and Forrester analyst, and you are now a CMO advisor and consultant for big and small brands. Maybe you can tell us a little bit more so people can get to know you if they don't know who you are already.
Yeah, well, thank you. So I always say that my career is non-linear. I've worked at 2 Omnicom agencies. I've worked at brands like Sephora and Constellation Brands. I've been an analyst at Forrester, but I've always focused on what's new and next within digital marketing. And most recently, I left Gartner and really helped them to build out their CMO innovation and operations division, I guess you could say. And really that was mostly working with CMOs because they're tasked with doing those types of things. And so it's been so rewarding and interesting to be focusing on such an interesting time where, you have all of these technologies that are, not invading, but, cropping up faster than we can possibly imagine. And then how can marketers think about those technologies and then leverage them and exploit them to sell and reach customers and provide experiences in new and creative ways.
And you also, if correct me if I'm wrong, but you did work on, MQs, even with agencies and stuff like this. So you kind of know the both sides of the spectrum. The dark side and what agencies are doing and what Gartner is doing. So that I think always gives you a different perspective to things that are happening.
You're right. I worked on Gartner's Magic Quadrant. Actually, our 2020 one just published.
Yep.
And I loved that project so much because, to your point, I kind of sat at the crux between CMOs and brands, and then understanding what holding companies and agencies, their products, how they were speaking to marketers, and kind of hearing and being able to do the analysis and research, coming from both of those sides and getting all that information and perspective was quite unique and something that I think has accelerated my thinking. I learned a lot, and as I move into this new phase of advising CMOs and doing my own consulting practice, I find myself being able to advise on both sides, and I think that's really exciting.
That's very cool. So I think today, what I think people that are, listening and watching, my podcasts, everybody's kind of freaking out to some degree about what is going on under COVID on a global scale. You and I were chatting last week, and you brought some very interesting points that this is not really the time to panic. This is the time to really sit down, take a step back, see what's going on, and try to really play with your strengths. Am I,
Absolutely.
that actual? Okay. So the thing that you really, first of all, we need people to talk about the positive things and how to look at, every coin has two sides. And, advising people to really understand their strengths, analyze them, and then take advantage of them and double down and really try to figure out innovation and invest in it now. I think is one of the things that we were chatting that I think is very, very relevant, and more CMOs and more brands need to hear it, whether they're small or they're the big old dinosaurs.
Yep, absolutely. So I think, we all lived through the housing crisis, and, my joke is the first person to go within an organization is your marketing team.
Yep.
And I think now with what's going on today, that should actually be the opposite of what you're thinking. I mean, of course, there's all of these massive layoffs. We're seeing marketers lose their jobs left and right. But prior to this crisis, I was talking to brands, quote unquote dinosaur brands, startups, but I was really trying to get them to understand that they need to put together the resources, the budget, and the strategy and the vision for how they want to move their business forward during this age of digital transformation.
Correct.
And there was some resistance to that. There was people that were fully invested in that. That's why we created the maturity model, right?
Yeah.
And then here we are, post this, well, not post, we're still living in this crisis. We're during this crisis. And the people that weren't taking those steps that we were talking so much about prior to this are really, really getting burned.
Yep.
Because they're backstepping. They don't have the processes, the resources, the thinking, the strategy, the vision, and they're flat-footed. And the people that were prior to this preparing, thinking about the future, we're seeing them really move forward, business as usual, being confident, doubling down. And I think that it will be something that we will look back on. And I think that let me back up. Innovation isn't a lab. Innovation is a strategy. Innovation doesn't always equal technology. And so innovation is not a fad by any stretch of the imagination, but it is something where if we can look at what's going on right now, where somebody can lean on a team and resources and a vision to be able to pivot and to think creatively and to tap into their employees and to tap into their partner ecosystem so they can react in a way and prepare in a way where they can shine during moments like this. Yeah.
But I mean, it is clear if we were to look at statistics, and everybody's kind of looking at data right now, and there is clear indication that certain brands that are in industries that are, for example, mobile first, which the space I know a lot, or that they're very digitally savvy and they have their digital framework and digital supply chain in place. Not only are they doing okay, they're doing very well. Whether they're media companies, whether they are e-commerce companies, gaming, and so on, and others are being completely decimated and destroyed. I mean, look at yesterday, I think, was the news that came out about Macy's. I mean, they're letting go everybody. And they had just a month before, I believe, laid off their mobile team and here in the Bay Area. And I mean, this is just, and it's not just Macy's, it's many of this type of big retailers that did not have the proper strategy, understanding, and did not really understand the power of digital and mobile engagement in this new world.
Well, I think, yes, and of course the Macy's news is terrible, just as the Wayfair news is very terrible. And coming from retail, I worked at Sephora, and still we're seeing these malls just completely collapsing and closing. And actually Sephora doubled down. They doubled down on creating a store experience and a mobile first experience that coincided with the in-store experience, and they've managed to grow the business. In fact, I live in Bend, Oregon, a tiny town. They're opening up a Sephora here. I mean, they're continuing to investing. And, when I lived in San Francisco is, they have Williams-Sonoma, they have Macy's, they have Sephora. I mean, lots of retailers, Gap, of course, Gap Inc. And we were watching as they were just not investing in innovation and growing and thinking differently. Nordstrom's was doing a good job. Neiman Marcus was doing an interesting job, really exploring how to bring that digital experience to life. I think, I have a really close friend and a mentor, and she's a serial entrepreneur, and she was literally launching a consulting firm that was going to be very much hands-on, boots on the ground within, very large organizations. And overnight, she shifted all of her products to digital, all of them.
Yep.
Her workshops, her consulting, her podcast. I mean, she doubled down and pivoted immediately.
Yep.
And I think, another thing to think about is leadership. We're seeing leaders that are taking, fierce action, most likely because they have a risk management plan in place. And then we see a lot of leaders that are frankly copying other leadership that they're seeing in the market. Sure. And then we're seeing leaders that, aren't doing anything at all.
They're paralyzed.
And so it's this readiness. Yeah, they're paralyzed. It's this readiness, and it's this, digital is, I think we're in an age where digital transformation right now is on crack.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I should have bought Zoom stock a month ago. I mean, it's going to change the way and it accelerate adoption in a way that's unprecedented, in my opinion. So.
Do you think that this is also going to force us? Obviously, we both agree that brands need to invest in innovation now more than ever, if they want to survive. But do you think that it's like you said, I think earlier, there is not just about technology, it's about the cultural part of it. And these leaders need to learn from the best practices now more than ever.
Absolutely.
And it's the organization that needs to be shifted and changed. I mean, we can't rely anymore on knocking somebody's door or, turning on a desk and say, hey, let's go and talk about it. Now we need to rely on collaboration technology like Zoom and others.
Yep.
And even when you collaborate documents, this is changing, but this is just their tools. In the end of the day,
right.
We've had these tools for a long time. People were not using them, and now they're forced to use them. And but it comes back to the people and organization more so, and the culture than anything else.
I completely agree with you. I mean, it was frustrating when I used to consult with mainly Fortune 500 companies that were completely satisfied with growing 2% year over year. And it was always business as usual. And they just didn't feel the need or the pressure to adopt any of these things because, to them, the legacy of growth was, right on track. And I think, every single time that a CMO came to me with this mandate from their CEO to quote unquote innovate, they were really, kind of deer in headlights because typically that was the CIO's job, right? And so we saw that shifting to the CMO, and they would be overwhelmed with this. And what we used to do is just break it down into parts. And really it's about people. So there's a huge culture element to this. And oftentimes organizations look outside for ideas. And it was really the organizations that tapped into their employees, whether it's through ideation management platforms, whether it was through, workshops or other things that they would do to really engage them and help them think like entrepreneurs, because you're so head down. And what was so interesting at Sephora, for example, some of the best ideas came from accounting, or they came from our real estate division, people that, not our digital group. And so the employee piece was so important, and that CMO was being tasked to drive culture change. And they don't have the soft skills and the hard skills needed to do that. In addition to the stakeholder management that is absolutely imperative to sell in the vision to drive the change of the organization. And so that was always my starting place with CMOs when it came to innovation. And then from there, you move forward. But so many people would skip that step and they would go straight to creating some sort of prototype or some sort of, app or some gimmick essentially. And then they'd find that they had to move backwards and start all over again. I saw it over and over again.
I mean, yeah, this goes back to, having the right process and really understanding how your company work. But those are the people that are also, I think, the gems that do think outside of the box and do understand the problems. They take initiatives to fix it. And I do wish that more companies would identify them. In fact, I was talking to a startup that is kind of focusing just on finding experts in the company. And yesterday, and they really can then empower those people, because we, on top of everything else going on, we will see new leadership. And in time of crisis, everybody says that, whether this is a war or it's a crisis like this, real leaders are born and shine, and they help others, and they collaborate with partners and with customers, and they're listening a lot more, and doing things like that. I now when we're talking about this, actually, I'm thinking right away what what Gartner was doing with the L2 index for brands, which was really kind of looking at brands, where are they in mobile and digital, in multi-channel, in all their experience. And I wish people now would go and double check that and say, oops, we were already told that, we didn't do much about it. Now it's the time to everybody to do a self-evaluation of their brands and understand where they are, also where they want to be, with hopefully some help from people like you that are smarter, and then literally double down, because the dust will settle from this meteor strike, as my buddy Rory Kane says, and the dinosaurs will be dead, and only the ones that are on top of it now are gonna make it, and some actually maybe quite better off.
I think I have a lot of experience in doing assessments for brands, and I think it's very hard for a brand to do it on themselves. We used to tell clients to kind of use the framework that was created.
To be true to their own kind of thing. They're drinking a little bit too much from the same Kool-Aid sometimes.
Absolutely. I mean, I think one of the innovation questions, and just derail a little bit. One of the questions that I loved that I asked in one of my surveys was, where do your ideas come from? And of course, we surveyed CMOs. I can't remember the percentage, but it was a very high percentage of them. The big ideas came from them. So I thought that was pretty funny.
Sure.
I think operationally, for an organizations to move quickly, they really need to be flat, and they need they need to be empowered to make decisions. And I talked a lot about agile marketing, and if you look at Netflix, for example, Netflix is totally flat. I think everybody's a director. But they also are completely empowered to make their own decisions and move quick and do things, and that's why they're able to be so profitable and so successful. And so I think I think that the leadership, of course, there's definite leaders that are standing out right now, and there's again some that are flat-footed, and then I think operationally we need to rethink about how we're building our organizations. But that self-assessment is absolutely key. You really need to understand the reality of your as-is reality, and then what your to-be reality is, right? And oftentimes people would do the assessment and they say, okay, on a level from 1 to 5, I'm a 2, and I'm going to get to a 4 next year. You're not. You can't skip levels, so you have to plot out step by step how you're going to actually advance your maturity. You're not going to overnight be able to, kind of be a master, if you will. You have to be really realistic about nailing those things down in order for them Well, really, in order for them to be effective processes, right?
But
You can't just put a, yeah.
yeah, no, but I'm
Go
sorry
ahead.
to interrupt you, but one of the things that I think many need to understand that the playing field has changed. The foundation is completely changed, and you cannot look at your maturity model, let's say, or where you are, anymore the way you did during normal times. We don't live in normal
Mm-hmm.
times anymore, and it's going to take a while. So
Yeah.
now more than ever, you have to look at um, 20 other factors that are affecting your customer, your partners, your competition. And so it's not just looking at it from traditional standpoint, but you really, really need to look at it from a multiple levels to understand where everything has shifted.
I couldn't agree more. I think you almost have to, I mean, I don't think CMOs have ever been in charge of putting together a risk management plan, but I think
Yeah.
they will be now. I think that you also need to be ready to pivot your messaging. I mean, if you think
Yes.
about your customers, and we talk about brand, there was a lot before all of this was happening about talks about brand purpose and about authenticity and customer loyalty, and I think and empathy. And I think that I think that there's going to be a lot more focus on that. We're certainly seeing great messaging and brands that are doing that very, very well right
Yeah.
now. But everything was growth, lead gen. And I think that is going to shift a lot,
Yeah.
because the customer, I think acquiring a customer is going to look very, very different based on the product, the messaging, the way in which you purchase the product. Again, going to digital, not physical. So to your point, yes, so many additional variables that we'll have to think about as marketers.
So, we've talked about where things are and, what people should be thinking about, but what advice would you give them, very specific advice or homework that, I think marketers and agencies should really take out of this? I
Sure.
mean, we are living in a different world. It's going to take a while, and it's not just the US, it's everybody. And all those
Mm-hmm.
startups that they think that they're global, now more than ever, are going to have to think about this even more so.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what is coming to the top of your mind right now in terms of, how should they do any of this, or what are your top, few points here that you want to, get people to take out of this in the end?
I think, and I mean, honestly, my answer to this would be so different if it were several months ago.
Sure.
But I mean, I think you have to look at consumer insights. You have to understand the behavior of consumers right now, and take account all the socioeconomic variables that are out there. And then you need to take those to your stakeholders, and you have to get them to really understand the new reality that is their customer or their prospect. And you need to get alignment on how you're going to move forward as an organization. You need to fight to keep your marketing budget. You need to think about, the resources that you're going to need in order to execute against a pivot of, you need to assess your current marketing plan. I've seen so many bad LinkedIn ads that are so tone deaf because they didn't delay their media plan, and they're still running ads that are so, frankly inappropriate.
It's inappropriate. It's completely inappropriate. I agree with you.
It's mind-boggling to me. And so that's what I would do. And you need to do those things in parallel. Right now you need to be multitasking as a CMO more than you ever have. I said to my husband the other night, I said, there's no politician and there's no senior executive that's been getting any sleep. So nobody's sleeping well right now because I mean, the ones that are juggling, the ones that are hustling, the ones that are prioritizing, they are going to win. Don't cut your marketing budget. You know, think smart, not hard. And, you know, one of the things that we haven't talked about is building an innovation ecosystem. So
Yes.
don't just think about innovation in a bubble, but go to your agency, come to startups, go to consumer technology companies, start with the customer insight and create something that's new, and lean on those partners, your MarTech vendors, in order to help you, because it's going to take a village.
Yeah, I mean, this is it's a great point, because we've been talking to people for probably almost 2 weeks now. Me and my team, you know, pause whatever you're doing, rethink your messaging, because whatever you had set up as an automated messaging right now is probably not only not going to resonate, it will turn people off. um, People do need to look at the data that they are getting back in the analytics to understand what channels are now performing better. Is it TV?
Yep.
Maybe for some people, TV is still, everybody's watching TV. Is it mobile? Is it social? You know, and then is it push notification? Is it SMS? And then it's everything needs to be rethought. And maybe you can save a lot of money by cutting some part of your budget that is a billboard on the freeway, where there is no cars on that freeway anymore. And you
Right,
had money,
exactly.
right?
Man.
Or you have money set for events. Well, take that money from the events and relocate it into digital engagement that is smart, that
Absolutely.
is really understanding the user, the brand, and make it again very personalized, essential. In fact, I was talking to a couple of other analysts at Gartner, and you know, we were discussing this whole concept of useful, helpful, and essential. And you know,
Yes.
it's now more than ever, this is
I like that.
extremely important. But going back to that whole thing of innovation and investing in innovation, I think it's to me the biggest point that you're driving and you're talking about. Um, because if people don't do it now, 3 months from now, your brand may be forgotten. Your brand may be completely destroyed. And
Yes.
shifting now quickly and adjusting things in real time. Real time is going to be kind of also essential. It's going to be probably the only strategy that any marketer and any brand can do now.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think I think, isn't it Adobe Summit starting today?
Yes,
Virtually.
digital. Yes.
I haven't been able to log in quite yet. I'm very curious to see about, you know, Dreamforce and Adobe Summit and these massive events and what that's going to look like from a virtual perspective. I think another thing too, going back to that, you know, consumer insight and really understanding behaviors, I think what brands can lean on are social analytic platforms where they can get, you know, real-time understanding of what the conversations are, what's the sentiment, what's the messaging, and be able to leverage that into their pivoted, you know, media, right, and creative. Luckily, creative can kind of turn on a dime and doesn't take weeks to do anymore. But that could be a tool that brands could leverage that could be more important now than ever.
I was going to give you another example on the same thing, which comes to mind is I had to cancel a few Airbnbs. And frankly, Airbnb got back to me quite quickly and say, oh, we're listening, we'll get back to you. But then after a week, and then after 2 weeks of actually not getting anything from them, and I understand they have a massive user base, you have to think about it's not just the messaging that you put out there on the app or on social. Hey, you know, we are changing the policy, we're going to help you, but then you need to execute on it. Because if
Absolutely.
if you can execute on it and you piss people off,
Yep.
that you promise that you're gonna give them full refunds, and I had 3 properties and only one gave me a full refund, and you don't take that new policy really too hard, people are gonna come out with some bad experience, and your brand is gonna be, uh, written about, whether in Bloomberg or Wall Street Journal or something else. So I do think that it's not just the marketing team, but the marketing team now more than ever, and marketing leaders need to work with the rest of the customer success team, customer support team, and the rest of the executives, that there is a full buy-in in whatever is being said that the
Yes.
brand is doing. The right hand and the left hand know what that is, and there is no this disconnect.
I completely agree with you. I think there's two points that you're bringing up that I think are really interesting. Number one is, I think more than ever, a CEO is going to be part of the brand. So I don't think anybody's going to forget the Marriott CEO's
Yes.
speech. That is a phenomenal example. And to me, those two things are synonymous now, is that reaction. And then to your point, there's been a lot of brand communication, and that just says, we're aware of this.
Yeah.
We care, and there's no follow-up. And, frankly, I was supposed to go to Singapore to visit my sister, and we were going to go to Malaysia for 2 weeks in about 2 weeks. And the communication that I've been getting as a very loyal Delta customer versus United, which is the airline we were going to take to Singapore, could not be more different. So to your point, cadence, personalization, those are so, empathy, they couldn't be more important. And Airbnb just announced that they're giving $100,000 or maybe more to people that rent out their houses because they're trying to help them. So I'm hoping you get your money back because they're getting money from Airbnb.
Yeah, I mean, it is what it is, but the whole point is that, brands need to be careful what they say that they're going to do, what they actually do. I had a different example with American Airlines, out of all, where I canceled my flight. They said, we can give you this part of the ticket. And later on, they actually sent me a message and said, you know what, we're giving you full refund because of COVID. We understand. And I'm like, all right, you won me. And I was completely fine that, my extra leg room seat fee was not, it wasn't refundable to begin with. But hey, hands down to brands like this that are going beyond what they, what you expect them to do, and they really try to understand it. Just like you said with the Marriott, what they've been doing, it's amazing. But is there anything else? I mean, we know budgets are going to be changed on both sides, not just on what marketers need to do, but also people and brands need to spend. Their budgets are changed. Their people are being cut as well. I mean, is there something I'm missing here? I mean, this has been a great conversation, but I just kind of, one last thought maybe that you can, we can close that up for today.
I think, before this epidemic, I feel like there was a lot of marketers that thought marketing was just doomsday. And I always said, I think it's the most exciting time to be a marketer. I mean, there's so many, it's not the 4 Ps anymore. It's not, the P&G, blueprint, that everybody, J&J, and, it's evolved and it's changed so much. And if you think about, I always say to marketers, you don't have to know technology inside and out. I am by far and away not a technologist, but I know what it can do. Yeah. I know how it can serve my customer. I know what it can enable. Yeah. And so, I think that you just continue to push yourself and to to be passionate about marketing and have faith in this career, because it can do really exceptional things, and we're able to reach customers and create products in ways that enrich lives. And I really do want marketers to stay positive during these really uncertain times and push themselves to think creatively and to take care of their teams and lead with with passion and with authority and with empathy.
Yeah, I think those are great words of advice and wisdom, Elizabeth. I do hope that more people would listen and um, don't think about just the bottom line short term, but the bottom line long run, and
Yep.
what will happen with their brands, because now is definitely not the time to panic and to copy what everybody else is doing, but to think about and as we were saying, double down on innovation and reach out to smarter people, reach out to internal experts in the company, identify who they are, and try to really put the customer first and understand the customer more than ever, and where everything else is going. I mean, this is a complex thing, and I think we're going to have another 2 or 3 different recordings of more podcasts to do follow-ups. I'm sure that people are going to have a lot of questions, but if just to finish this, if somebody wants to take your advice and pick your brain on this, what is the best way to reach out on LinkedIn?
Absolutely. I am a huge LinkedIn power. I call myself a power user. So that would absolutely be the best way. So Elizabeth
Okay.
Shaw, and I'll return your message as quickly as possible. And I love this topic. I love marketing. I love speaking with gentlemen like you, and so I welcome any communication.
Elizabeth, thank you so much. Stay safe, stay at home. I wish you the best, and I really appreciated your time speaking with us today and with me today, and best of luck.
Yeah, same to you, and the pleasure was all mine.